Yo, so what is going on, guys? It is your Squid here, and I'm bringing you a video, an interesting video. It's a video I've been kind of wanting to do for a few weeks now, and since there's no Annihilation updates coming out at this very moment, there will be a teaser most likely going up towards the very end of August for the September update for Chapter 2. But in this video, I'm basically going to be comparing the 12 locations that are in both Annihilation Chapter 1 and the Chapter 2 map. So there's quite a few locations, of course, 12. It's not that big of an amount of returning locations, but there are some noticeable ones, and none of them look the exact same on both maps, so I thought it'd be pretty interesting just to compare both versions of them. Have some images on screen as well pretty soon so that you guys can see which ones I'm talking about. So we're going to be starting here with the most popular Annihilation location in my eyes, which is business building. So business building in Chapter 1 is a lot bigger than Chapter 2's. However, Chapter 2's, I really do think Chapter 2's is a good version. It's of course in the desert, so it's in a more interesting location. The one in Chapter 1 is in the top left of the map, so it's a little bit further away from everything else. But the one in Chapter 2 is a little bit more centralized, I would say. But Chapter 2 basically it's a lot more compact, a lot more close quarters. It's not nearly as tall or as wide, like I said before. It's not as intimidating, but it is more detailed. So it's really difficult to choose which business building I prefer, but I think just for the intimidation aspect of Chapter 1's, I do prefer Chapter 1's a little bit more, just because, you know, when you actually go to conquer business building in Chapter 1, it's like you're like scared to do it because it's very, very deadly and very crazy. Basically, I've said it before, but it's basically the Tilted Towers of Chapter 1, at least, of Annihilation, because it's just very intimidating and very vertical. So there's that first location. Moving on to the second location, we have another named location, a city, which is the futuristic city called Titanium. So both of these cities are good. The one in Chapter 2 is kind of like a coastal city. I really, really like the location of the one in Chapter 2 because it's like connected right up with swamp. I really do like that aspect. It has some boats at the front and stuff like that. Chapter 2's is more vertical. It does have 3 skyscrapers and the bridges in the middle, which really I always wanted Titanium to be like a sort of Tilted Towers location. Even like the buildings themselves, I wanted them to be like skyscrapers or like towers for a lot of verticality, like a vertical city and stuff like that. And then the one in Chapter 1 has a lot of very expensive blocks, so it's kind of difficult to balance in that way. You know, it's kind of confusing, the rules in that map. And then the actual buildings, some of them are pretty cool. You can trade, you can do some trades in the one in Chapter 1. But overall, I do like the location and the overall just layout and the I guess just the balance of the one in Chapter 2 a little bit more, so I'm going to have to go with Chapter 2's Titanium is better. So Business Building 1 is better, Titanium 2 is an improvement. So in the third location, I have the Swamp, which is, in Chapter 1, I think these are very, very similar, like, in terms of size in Chapter 1 and 2. So a lot of the other locations aren't really you can't really compare the size of them, but these ones are pretty close because you not only in Chapter 1 have the main water swamp, you have the dead swamp, which has a few more islands surrounded by a ton of lava. And I think the reason I like Swamp in Chapter 2 more is because there's actual locations all around it, not just, you know, above it, I guess, because in Chapter 1, Swamp is the very bottom of the map, and another reason is there's a ton of open space where there's just nothing in both the dead swamp and the normal swamp in Chapter 1. I also do like, I mean, they both have pretty good islands, you know. The ones in Chapter 1 have like actual buildings and villages and stuff on them. The ones in Chapter 2 just have like natural things like trees and stuff like that. But I do think the one in Chapter 2 is better. I do like how it connects to a lot of other locations, so I would say it's kind of difficult, but I would say Chapter 2's Swamp is better, and it will be improving for sure in the upcoming update, especially the September update. But next up, we have the Farm, and I'm going to have to give this just a tiny bit. I think I'm going to have to give the edge to Chapter 1 a little bit, because The one in Chapter 1 has a lot more going on with it. It has the main barn, which Chapter 2 also has. It has, some farm animals, which Chapter 2 also has. And then it has like a stable as well, which Chapter 2 also has. It has a silo, which they both have. But the one in Chapter 1, I do think it is a little bit better, especially since it's separated from everything else by the large area of lava, which it used to have the volcano next to it, but it doesn't anymore. I don't know, it's very, very difficult to choose, but I do think the one in Chapter 1 also has the farmhouse, and it has some actual crops there. The one in Chapter 2 it doesn't have any crops, it just has farm animals. But the barn does look better in Chapter 2, I think. I don't know, though. It's very hard to choose, but I would say I'd have to give the edge to Chapter 1 there. So the next location is actually an interesting one because it is the first... Or no, actually, Farm is a non-named location. It's a landmark in Chapter 2, so it has less chests, and it doesn't have a shulker box. In Chapter 1, it's a named location with a shulker box. So it's like in Fortnite, if you were to say... Tilted Towers has a named spot on the map. Like, you open the map and it says Tilted Towers. But if you go to, like, the Orchard on the map right now, it doesn't have an actual name when you open the map. That's basically how I differentiate those on my map. It's pretty similar. So, just to keep everything kind of, I don't know, just to keep a different sort of thing going on with it, I don't know. The next area is the lab, which was a named location in Chapter 1, and it was very close to the original spawn on Chapter 1. It was made out of iron blocks and stuff, so it's hard to balance that again, of course. But overall, the lab was made into a landmark in Chapter 2, which I do think actually works better for the lab. I prefer it just being like a couple room, because, again, the size isn't that much smaller in Chapter 2 compared to Chapter 1's lab. It's really not that much smaller of a location. Of course, it doesn't have the shulker box or anything, but I do think, I do think lab works better as a landmark rather than a POI. Next up, we have the clock tower here. So the clock tower, I always want to be like a central location, it's never going to be a POI, so it's always got to be a landmark, of course. And it's kind of hard to choose, because in Chapter 2, I put it right in between swamp and flooded downtown, or just the downtown, which it's in a good spot in Chapter 2, I will say that. It's also in a very good spot in Chapter 1 because it's like right in the middle of the map, and it's made out of bricks and stuff like that. So overall, the clock tower is bigger and more intimidating in Chapter 1. So I am going to have to say, just by a little bit, just by a small margin, that the Chapter 1 clock tower is better. I don't know for sure. But I don't know, I do like the clock itself more on Chapter 2. I think it stands out more with the blocks I used. But I think the overall clock tower, just being an actual tower, and being able to go from floor to floor, because you can't really go... You can do the clock tower in Chapter 1 from top to bottom, rather than bottom to top, like normal. Like, it's not nearly as fun doing that clock tower bottom to top. But in Chapter 2, you pretty much have to go from the bottom up. But so that kind of takes away a little bit of the different gameplay that you can do. But the next one is the Wither's house, and this is a very easy one. Chapter 2 for sure is better. I mean, Chapter 2, it's more close to the middle of the map. It's just bigger, and it's just got wood there, so you can actually land there at the beginning of a game. It's got some new nether wood. I don't know, it's just a really it's just a lot better of a location, I have to say. It has a lot more, obviously since it's bigger, it has a lot more materials and stuff you can use. So Chapter 2's Wither's house is miles better. So the next one is the church, which is a landmark, a small non-named location on both maps. And this is a very difficult one for me to choose. The one in Chapter 1 is very close to the middle of the map, and it is made out of wood. The one in Chapter 2 is made out of quartz, and it is in the top left of the map, and in the snowy area. And I do like both of them. I'm pretty sure the one in Chapter 2 is a little bit bigger, but I think if I had to choose, I like Chapter 1's a little bit more. I don't know, I just like it being closer to the middle of the map. It's basically, honestly, it's personal preference, but I just prefer it being closer to the middle, just like the clock tower. But the next one is the old oak tree, which is very difficult to choose, but I'm going to have to give it to Chapter 2. The one in Chapter 1 is smaller, and it's not as tall, but it is more detailed. Obviously, since it's smaller, I could add more detail to it. And it's over there by the farm as well, so it's in a good spot. The one in Chapter 2 is also near the plantation, so it's basically near a farm. I don't know, though. The one in Chapter 2 is pretty cool. In this screenshot, you see the Ultima Magma tree from the June update with the natural disasters, which is cool. I like changing up the old oak tree, you know, switching it up. But overall, I don't know. I think the one in Chapter 2 is a little bit better. But honestly, it's just personal preference, honestly. And the next one is the dome. So the dome is another one that is for sure been improved over in Chapter 2. Chapter 1's is literally just a floating... I mean, I like the idea that it's floating, but it just does not work. It's literally, like, I can never tell if it's actually part of lab or, like, if it's its own separate landmark, like its own separate non-named location, because you can teleport from lab to it. I don't know, honestly. In Chapter 2, it's its own location. It's big. It's got a few chests there as well. It's got, like, an actual theme to it. The one in Chapter 1 just had, like, grass and trees and stuff. It was very weird and very small and cramped. I don't really like it. Although I do, like I said, I do like the fact that it's floating. That does make it pretty cool. But it just does not work as well as the one in Chapter 2. Chapter 2's is definitely an improvement. Next up, the second to last location here, number 11, I have the graveyard. So both graveyards are pretty similar. They both have some pretty cool aspects to them. I would say the one in Chapter 2 is better because it doesn't have the constant soul sand. So you can actually move around. It's more of like a circular shape as well than the one in Chapter 1. The one in Chapter 1 has like the path, the gravel path that you pretty much have to follow. The one in Chapter 2 does not have that. It has the gravel path, but it doesn't have the walls around it, so it's not like it's separating you from the rest of the area, basically. The one in Chapter 2 has a few more buildings and stuff like that, a few more structures. But yeah, it's kind of hard to choose, but I do think the one in Chapter 2 is a little bit better. And finally, the 12th and the final location is one that was a POI in Chapter 1 and came back as a landmark in Chapter 2. This is the station. So the station didn't really have any storyline stuff for Chapter 1 going on because Chapter 1 really didn't have too much of a storyline. Chapter 2 is basically the center of the storyline stuff. And they both have the satellite, the radar dish or whatever. It's pretty cool looking. But overall, I would have to say I prefer Chapter 2's. I prefer Chapter 1's. This is I think it's the only instance on this where a location came back as a landmark instead of a named location, and I preferred the named location version. I'm pretty sure because lab I didn't like as much. And then what else was it? I think farm. Yeah, I did like the Chapter 1 version of farm, but overall station I don't know, I prefer it being a little bit of a bigger, research station, a few more rooms and stuff like that going on, rather than, with Chapter 2's. Chapter 2's is cool, but I have to say I do prefer it being a bigger location, we'll say. But there you guys have it. So that is my comparison of the 12 recurring locations in Annihilation Chapter 1 and 2. If you guys have seen the videos and seen or you can just see from this video alone the difference and the comparison of them, I'll have them up on screen like I said. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. More videos coming soon. My next video should be a Spiral Lucky Block mod showcase. I'm pretty dang excited to showcase that. The channel has been growing. We're about to hit 300 subscribers, so thank you guys for that. And we'll be there in no time, honestly. So thank you guys for watching. More videos coming soon. I'm working hard on the September update for Chapter 2 right now. And I'll see you in the next one, guys. And peace out.